She inherited the family's worst property. But what was hidden there changed everything. Jennifer Taylor gripped the rusty keys tightly as she walked down the dirt road leading to the rural property. After years of being humiliated by her siblings during arguments over their grandfather's inheritance, she had received only that decaying house that nobody wanted. That was precisely why she grew suspicious when her brothers laughed too loudly upon discovering which property she had inherited. Brian and Michael had always been too clever to show so much joy over something that didn't benefit them in some way. The cold October wind blew through the dry trees in the yard, making a noise that sounded like a lament. The two-story house rose before her, like a painful reminder of everything her family had lost over the years. Or at least, that's what they had always told her. As she climbed the porch steps, Jennifer noticed one of the floorboards gave slightly under her weight. The paint on the walls was peeling in large pieces, revealing the dried-out wood underneath. Even so, something about that house stirred a strange feeling of familiarity in her. The key struggled in the old lock, but finally the door opened with a prolonged creak. The smell of mold and dust immediately invaded her nostrils. Jennifer took a few cautious steps inside the dark interior, searching for a light switch on the walls. When she managed to turn on a dim ceiling light in the living room, what she saw left her completely bewildered. Dozens of yellowed letters were scattered across the wooden floor, some opened, others still sealed. They all seemed to have been left there on purpose, as if someone wanted them to be found. Jennifer bent down and picked up one of the nearest letters. The envelope was addressed to her, but the post office stamp showed a date from 15 years ago. The sender signed only as, "Your real grandmother." Jennifer's hands began to tremble slightly. She had always believed that her paternal grandmother, Mrs. Margaret, had been the only grandmother she had known. The elegant and cold woman who visited the family on Sundays, always criticizing something and making unpleasant comparisons with other families in town. The first letter she opened revealed something impossible to believe. The handwriting was firm, from someone elderly but lucid. "My dear Jennifer, I know you must be confused reading this, but you need to know the truth. The woman you call grandmother is your grandfather's second wife. I am your real grandmother, and I was kept away from you when you were just 5 years old." Jennifer's heart raced. She sat on the dusty floor and continued reading with a mixture of disbelief and growing indignation. The letter explained that the family had considered the real grandmother unsuitable for being of humble origin and having ideas considered too progressive for the local elite. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Jennifer opened a second letter, this one dated 10 years ago. The handwriting was the same, but the words revealed a deep pain. "You've grown so beautiful, my girl. I know because I watch you from afar whenever I can. Yesterday you walked through the town square wearing that blue dress that I secretly sewed myself for your mother to give to you. You have no idea that every special piece of clothing you received in childhood passed through my hands." Tears began to blur Jennifer's vision. How was it possible that her entire life had been built on such a cruel lie? She stood up abruptly and began searching the house with an urgency she couldn't control. In the living room, behind a framed picture with a faded landscape, she found a small collection of hidden photographs. The images showed an elderly woman with a gentle gaze beside a red-haired girl. It was herself as a child. In moments, she couldn't remember living. One photo showed her playing in a flower garden that definitely wasn't the backyard of her childhood home. She wore a dress she recognized from an old drawer of her mother's, the one always described as a gift from a distant aunt. In the photo, the elderly woman smiled while teaching her to make a flower crown. Jennifer examined each photo with growing attention. There were at least a dozen of them, all showing moments of affection and care that seemed to have been completely erased from her memory. How was this possible? Determined to find more answers, she climbed the creaking stairs to the second floor. The hallway was dark and smelled of old wood, but 3 doors opened to rooms that needed to be explored. In the first room, she found only furniture covered with dusty sheets. The second room revealed a different surprise. There was a small single bed still with floral sheets, a low dresser, and a hand mirror on the table. In the dresser drawer, more letters, these organized by year in bundles tied with blue ribbon. Jennifer chose the most recent bundle and opened the first letter. The date was just 6 months ago. My dear Jennifer, I know you will soon come to this house. Your grandfather left very clear instructions before he passed, even though the family tried to hide the truth. This house has always been rightfully yours, as has my love that never diminished despite the forced distance. The revelation hit her like a punch in the stomach. The grandfather knew. The grandfather had left the house to her on purpose, not as the worst part of the inheritance, but as a way to finally reunite her with her true grandmother. But where was this woman now? She continued reading the letter with growing anxiety. You will find me when you are ready. Follow the path of the flowers you yourself planted with me when you were little. The garden still exists, even if it seems abandoned. Look for the small house behind the rose bushes we tended together. Jennifer rushed down the stairs and went out the back door of the main house. What they called a backyard was actually an extensive piece of land, with several smaller buildings scattered among trees and shrubs that must have once formed an organized garden. Walking through the overgrown vegetation, she managed to identify what remained of old flower beds. Some hardy rose bushes still bloomed despite the neglect, creating patches of color among the weeds. Following an almost invisible trail through the plants, she reached a small, light blue painted wooden house, partially hidden by vines. The little house seemed inhabited. There were clothes hanging on a makeshift clothesline and a small, well-kept herb garden beside the door. Smoke came from the chimney, indicating someone was inside at that very moment. Jennifer knocked on the door with her heart racing, not quite knowing what to expect. Slow footsteps approached from the other side, and she heard the sound of several locks being opened. When the door finally opened, an elderly woman with white hair and eyes just like hers appeared in the doorway. Jennifer? The trembling voice whispered her name like a prayer. Are you my grandmother? Jennifer barely managed to form the words. My dear girl. The woman extended trembling arms toward her. You've finally come home. The hug that followed brought back sensations Jennifer thought she had invented. The smell of lavender and cornbread, the soft texture of wrinkled hands stroking her hair, the feeling of absolute safety that only a true grandmother can provide. Why did they take me away from you? Jennifer asked through tears. Come, let's sit down. I have so much to tell you. The grandmother led her to a small wooden table where 2 cups were already set, as if she knew Jennifer would arrive that day. The grandmother's name was Dorothy, and her story was a series of injustices that explained much about the problems Jennifer had always felt in the family. Dorothy had married her grandfather when they were both young and poor, working together to build the property that was now being divided among the heirs. When your grandfather began to prosper from coffee sales, a wealthy family in town offered their daughter to him in marriage, Dorothy recounted as she poured aromatic tea. Margaret would bring a considerable dowry and important social connections. His family pressured him until he gave in. But you were already married, Jennifer protested. We were, but only in a religious ceremony in a small chapel. We had no money for official documentation back then. It was easy for them to deny the marriage had legal validity. The story continued to reveal increasingly painful details. Dorothy had fought to keep custody of her children, including Jennifer's father, but the wealthy family used their influence to prove she was unfit to raise them. The main argument was that a woman with no formal education and from a humble background would harm the children's future. Your father was still young when they took him from me. For years I tried to visit him, but they always stopped me. When he grew up and married your mother, I thought I could finally meet my grandchildren. Dorothy sighed deeply. But your mother had already been convinced I was a bad influence. And yet you visited me in secret? Jennifer remembered the photos. Your mother worked part-time at the fabric store. On Wednesday afternoons, I would go to your house and stay with you for a few hours. We said I was a neighbor helping out. You were so affectionate, always asking when I would return. The memories began to return in confusing fragments. Jennifer vaguely remembered a kind woman who taught her how to make cookies and told stories different from the ones she heard at home. She had always thought they were made-up memories or childhood dreams. Why did the visit stop? She asked. Mrs. Margaret found out. She threatened to tell your father everything, and cause problems in their marriage. Your mother got scared and asked me to stop coming." Dorothy wiped a tear from the corner of her eye. "But I never stopped watching over you from a distance." Dorothy stood up and brought over a shoebox filled with newspaper clippings, photos taken from afar and small objects. It was a complete archive of Jennifer's life, from childhood to adulthood. Photos from graduation, her first job, the marriage that had ended in divorce 2 years earlier. "You always knew everything about my life." Jennifer flipped through the clippings with a mix of emotion and embarrassment. "I have a friend who works at the church where you got married, another who was your colleague in school. Several women in town have always kept me informed about you." Dorothy smiled proudly. "They know the truth about our family." This revelation opened a new perspective on her hometown. How many people knew the real story and never said anything? Why had no one ever told her the truth? "And my grandfather, did he know you lived here?" Jennifer asked. Dorothy's face darkened slightly. "Your grandfather found out where I lived about 10 years ago. He showed up here one night, drunk and crying. He said he had lived a lifetime of regret." "What did he want?" "He asked for forgiveness. He said money and status never made up for what he lost by leaving me. Mrs. Margaret treated him coldly. The children were raised valuing only material possessions. He felt alone even though he was respected in town." Dorothy shared that her grandfather had started visiting her secretly in his final years. He had realized too late that he'd made the wrong choices, but didn't have the courage to face the family and reverse past decisions. "He said that when he passed, he would make sure you inherited this property. He knew you would find the truth here and might forgive me for disappearing from your life." Dorothy held Jennifer's hands. "This house was mine before everything happened. I planted the flowers, I tended the garden, I turned this place into a real home." The next revelation was even more shocking. Dorothy explained that during all these years living alone on the property, she hadn't been idle. The main house and outbuildings had become an informal refuge for women in difficult situations. "How many women have stayed here?" Jennifer asked. "I lost count. Some stayed a few weeks, others several months. I helped however I could. Shelter, food, sometimes even documents when needed." Dorothy seemed to relive happy memories. "One of them is a doctor now. Another opened a bakery in town. Several managed to restart their lives." Jennifer then understood why the family considered this property problematic. It wasn't just its state of repair, but because it represented something they preferred to forget: the family's humble origins and the injustice committed against Dorothy. "Do my brothers know about you?" she asked. "They suspect. Brian once came by asking about trespassers on the property. Michael tried to convince me to accept money to leave." Dorothy shook her head in disgust. "They're just like their father in his youth. They only see the financial side of things." The sun was setting when Jennifer finally rose from the table where they'd spent hours talking. She felt emotionally exhausted, yet more complete than she had in years. She finally understood why she'd always felt out of place in the family. Can I come back tomorrow?" she asked shyly. "This is your home, my dear. It always has been." Dorothy hugged her again. "But I need to warn you about one important thing before you leave." "What is it?" "This property is worth much more than your family imagines. There's a natural mineral water spring at the back of the land. Your grandfather discovered this shortly before he passed, but told no one except me." Jennifer felt as if the ground was moving beneath her feet. "A mineral water spring?" "Yes. And according to the documents your grandfather left me, this water has special properties. It could be commercially developed and generate significant money." Dorothy went to a cabinet and brought out a folder with papers. "That's why your brothers laughed when they learned you inherited this portion. They know about the water." "How do they know?" "Your grandfather told me he overheard Brian and Michael discussing hiring a lawyer to contest your inheritance. They plan to claim property abandonment to take it from you." Indignation overwhelmed Jennifer. After a lifetime of being treated as the least capable in the family, discovering they had manipulated even the inheritance was the final straw. She had received precisely the most valuable portion, but they expected her to give it up out of ignorance. "What should I do?" she asked. "First, you need to officially move here. Show that you haven't abandoned the property. Second, We need to find an honest lawyer to protect your rights, Dorothy paused. And third, perhaps it's time for some truths to come out in your family. That night, Jennifer drove back to town, with her mind buzzing with plans and emotions. She would spend the coming days organizing her move to the property and seeking legal assistance. But first, she wanted to confront her mother about everything she had discovered. The conversation with her mother was tense and revealing. Initially, Rebecca tried to deny knowing Dorothy, but faced with the photographs and letters, she ended up confessing that she had always known the truth. "Why did you never tell me?" Jennifer demanded an explanation. "Because I was afraid of your father and his family's reaction. They made me promise to keep it a secret, or there would be consequences for our marriage," Rebecca cried as she spoke. "I was young and financially dependent on them. I thought I was protecting you." "Protecting? You kept me from knowing my real grandmother." "I know it was wrong. I've always regretted it, but by the time you grew up, it was too late to explain." Rebecca tried to touch her daughter's arm, but Jennifer pulled away. The conversation also revealed that Jennifer's father also knew about Dorothy, but had chosen to remain silent for convenience. All the adults in her life had conspired to keep her away from the person who truly cared about her. "Do your brothers know about the water spring?" Jennifer asked directly. Rebecca hesitated before answering. "They overheard conversations between your father and the family lawyer. That's why they were so pleased when you inherited that part. They believe they can easily take the property from you." In the following days, Jennifer organized her move with renewed determination. She sold her furniture, cancelled contracts, and transferred her official address to the rural property. With every box she carried, she felt stronger and more determined to fight for what was hers. Dorothy helped her clean and organize the main house, revealing other secrets hidden over the years. In the attic, they found documents that proved the activities supporting women in need. There were detailed records of each person helped, including updated addresses. "Did you keep in touch with all of them?" Jennifer asked, impressed by the organization. "With most of them, yes. They write to me from time to time, telling me about their lives. Some even send money when they can, to help other women." The discovery of these records gave Jennifer an idea that began to take shape in her mind. If Dorothy had helped so many people over the years, perhaps it was possible to mobilize this support network for the current cause. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. 1 week after her permanent move, Brian showed up at the property unannounced. Jennifer received him on the main house's porch, determined not to show weakness. "I came to see how you're settling in here," he said with a fake smile. "That must be hard living alone in this abandoned place." "Actually, I'm feeling at home for the first time in years," she replied, watching the surprise on her brother's face. "Look, Jennifer, Michael and I were talking. Maybe you'd like to reconsider keeping this property. We can make a fair trade for a house in town, something more suitable for a single woman." The offer confirmed Jennifer's suspicions. They really wanted to take the property from her, but they still didn't have the courage to take direct legal measures. "Thanks for your concern, but I plan to stay here," she answered firmly. "Are you sure? This place has strange stories. There have always been strange people hanging around here." Brian tried a different approach. "What kind of strange people?" Jennifer decided to test what he knew. "Women of questionable reputation. Intruders who took advantage of some people's excessive kindness." He made a calculated pause. "It wouldn't be good for your reputation to be associated with that kind of thing." The attempt at intimidation only strengthened Jennifer's determination. She understood that the family had always known about Dorothy's work, but chose to view it through classist and sexist prejudices. "I don't care about stories from the past," she said. "This is my home now." Brian left visibly upset, but Jennifer knew he would return with a different strategy. She needed to act quickly to protect her rights and learn more about the mineral spring. The next day, Dorothy took her to see the spring. They walked for about 20 minutes along a nearly invisible trail through the trees until they reached a clearing where water gushed crystal clear from between the rocks. "Your grandfather brought a geologist here last year," Dorothy told her. According to tests, this water has rare mineral properties and could be commercially bottled. Jennifer knelt and drank some water directly from the spring. It was refreshing and had a slightly sweet taste, unlike any water she had ever tasted. "Is there documentation about this?" she asked. "All the documentation is kept in the house. Your grandfather was very careful to ensure everything was done legally." Dorothy smiled. "He said it would be his reconciliation gift to me and your true inheritance." Over the following days, Jennifer studied all the documents left by her grandfather. The technical reports confirmed the commercial value of the water, and there were even feasibility studies for setting up a small bottling plant. The most impressive thing was that her grandfather had registered everything in Dorothy's name, ensuring she had rights to exploit the spring. Now, with the inheritance of the property, Jennifer had legally become Dorothy's partner in this venture. "He really wanted to make up for the wrong he did to you," Jennifer commented. "Your grandfather died in peace because he knew he had arranged everything for justice to be done." Dorothy held her granddaughter's hands. "But he asked me to wait until you were ready before revealing everything." "Ready for what?" "To face your family and fight for your rights. He knew Brian and Michael well. He knew they would try to intimidate you and question your decisions." The conversation was interrupted by the unexpected arrival of several people at the property. They were women of different ages, some accompanied by children, all carrying flowers and food. Dorothy welcomed them joyfully, introducing each one to Jennifer. "This is Sarah, who now owns the Main Street bakery in town." Dorothy made the introductions. "This is Emily, a nurse at the community hospital, and this is Amanda, a teacher at the state high school." Each woman had a story of overcoming adversity to tell, and they all credited Dorothy as crucial to their new beginnings. They had organized themselves when they learned Jennifer was living on the property, wanting to show support and gratitude. "Mrs. Dorothy taught us that united women can overcome any difficulty," Sarah explained. "When she needs anything, all of us will be here." The spontaneous gathering turned into an afternoon of planning. The women suggested forming a cooperative to support the legal exploitation of the spring, ensuring that the profits would be used to continue helping others. "We can do this right this time," Emily suggested, "with documentation, records, everything within the law." "And we can create jobs for women who need a new opportunity," Amanda added. Jennifer felt enveloped by a positive energy she hadn't experienced in years. For the first time in her adult life, she was surrounded by people who truly cared about her and shared similar values. 2 weeks later, when the project was beginning to take concrete shape, Michael appeared at the property accompanied by a man in a suit who introduced himself as a lawyer. "Jennifer, we need to talk about legal matters concerning this property." Michael got straight to the point. "What kind of matters?" she asked, staying calm. "There are indications this property has been used for unauthorized activities, people living here without proper permits, possible unlicensed exploitation of natural resources." The lawyer spoke in a threatening tone. "What evidence do you have for this?" Jennifer crossed her arms. "We have neighbor reports about unusual comings and goings, especially women with questionable backgrounds." Michael tried to sound official. "And we've detected land alterations suggesting illegal water extraction." Jennifer realized they were attempting a legal intimidation strategy, probably hoping she'd get scared and accept some unfavorable settlement. "All uses of this property have been legal. As for the water, we have all necessary documentation," she replied confidently. "What documentation?" the lawyer asked, showing genuine interest. "The studies and permits obtained by my grandfather are all registered with the proper authorities." Jennifer had prepared for this moment. The men's expressions visibly changed. It was clear they hadn't expected organized, well-founded resistance. The lawyer whispered something in Michael's ear, who seemed to grow nervous. "Well, if you have documentation, we'd like to examine it to verify everything's in order." Michael tried one last move. "Of course. My attorney will contact yours to schedule the review." Jennifer used an expression she'd learned from Amanda, who was taking law classes. After the brothers left, Jennifer realized she would indeed need professional legal assistance. Dorothy suggested talking to Dr. Robert, son of one of the women she'd helped years ago, who was now a lawyer specializing in family and property law. The meeting with Dr. Robert was enlightening. He reviewed all the documentation, and confirmed Jennifer's rights were well-founded, but warned about possible strategies the brothers might use. They might try to challenge the will's validity, claim your grandmother Dorothy had no rights to the spring, or even fabricate environmental violations, he explained. But with the documentation you have, these claims would be hard to prove. What should we do to protect ourselves? Jennifer asked. Let's formally register the cooperative, obtain all necessary environmental permits, and properly document the social activities that have been conducted here. Dr. Robert made a list. Turn everything that was done informally into something official and transparent. The bureaucratic work took several weeks, but was essential to strengthen Jennifer's legal position. During this period, more women came forward offering support, creating a solidarity network that impressed everyone. One of these women brought surprising information. Her husband worked at the county clerk's office where the inheritance documents had been filed and had noticed some irregularities in the papers submitted by Jennifer's brothers. They presented a will different from the one officially archived, the woman revealed. My husband thought it was strange, but didn't know what to do with the information. This revelation opened a new line of investigation. Dr. Robert gained access to the original documents and discovered there were indeed discrepancies between the true will and the version Brian and Michael had used in the inheritance division. Your grandfather left very clear instructions about his intentions for the property. Dr. Robert showed the original document. And there's a specific clause about the spring's exploitation, designating part of the profits for social activities. Does this mean the inheritance division was fraudulent? Jennifer asked. Apparently, yes. They changed important details to benefit themselves. The lawyer seemed outraged. But now we have evidence to legally challenge it. The discovery of the fraud completely changed the landscape of the situation. Jennifer was no longer just an heir defending her rights, but a victim of family manipulation who had legal grounds to reverse unfair decisions. Dorothy was moved to learn that her grandfather's true intentions were documented. He told me he wanted you to know that he didn't consider you less capable than your brothers. On the contrary, he trusted you more to use the inheritance fairly. From there, events accelerated. Dr. Robert filed a legal action questioning the division of the inheritance, presenting the evidence of documentary fraud. The news spread quickly through the town, creating a scandal that shook the family's reputation. Brian and Michael initially tried to deny the accusations, but the documentary evidence was irrefutable. They had indeed manipulated the will to benefit themselves, believing Jennifer would never discover the truth. The legal process was closely followed by the local community, especially by the women who had been helped by Dorothy. They organized to publicly demonstrate that the work done on the property had been beneficial to society, countering the negative narrative the brothers were trying to build. During the hearings, it became clear that Brian and Michael had underestimated both Jennifer and Dorothy. They expected to deal with two isolated and vulnerable women, but encountered an organized and determined network. We always knew our sister was different from us, Brian admitted during his testimony. She was always more sensitive, more concerned about other people. We thought that was a weakness. And now? The judge asked. Now we see that it may have been our strength, Michael added, seeming genuinely remorseful. The brothers' confession accelerated the resolution of the case. They agreed to rectify the division of the inheritance according to their grandfather's original instructions, which gave Jennifer rights to a much larger share of the property and financial resources to implement her plans. With the legal situation resolved, Jennifer could finally focus on realizing the dreams that had been suppressed for so long. The women's cooperative was formalized, the spring water exploitation was properly licensed, and plans for a social support center began to take shape. Dorothy, at 83 years old, showed renewed energy seeing her decades of efforts finally being recognized and expanded. She took charge of coordinating support for women seeking help, while Jennifer handled the commercial and administrative aspects. "You know what makes me happiest," Dorothy said one afternoon as they watched the activity on the property. "Seeing that you inherited not just the material assets, but also the desire to help other people." "I learned from the best teacher," Jennifer replied, hugging her grandmother. The Social Support Center was inaugurated 6 months after the legal case was resolved. The event brought together not only the women who had been helped over the years, but also local authorities, journalists, and representatives of social organizations from throughout the region. Brian and Michael attended the inauguration, showing public acknowledgement of the mistake they had made. They even offered financial support for the center's activities in an attempt to repair the damage caused to the family. "We want you to know that we respect the work you're doing here," Brian told Jennifer during the ceremony, "and we regret taking so long to understand the true value of what our grandmother always did." The family reconciliation was gradual and careful, but it represented a significant emotional relief for everyone involved. Jennifer Taylor's parents also began visiting the property regularly, especially her mother, who wanted to make up for the years of silence about Dorothy. The commercial exploitation of the mineral water proved even more promising than expected. The exceptional quality of the water attracted interest from buyers across various regions, generating enough income to maintain and constantly expand the social activities. 1 year after arriving at that abandoned property, Jennifer barely recognized the place. The houses had been renovated and painted, the gardens replanted with flowers and vegetables, and there was always movement of people involved in constructive activities. The success of the center caught the attention of other communities, which requested consulting to implement similar projects. Dorothy and Jennifer began traveling through the region, sharing their experience and helping to create an even larger support network. "Sometimes I wonder where we would be if your grandfather hadn't left the instructions he did," Dorothy commented during one of these trips. "Maybe we would never have met again," Jennifer reflected. "Or perhaps fate would have found another way. The important thing is that we are together now." During the second year of the center's operation, Jennifer met Dr. Daniel, a psychologist who offered volunteer work for the women served. He had lost his mother young and found in social work a way to honor her memory. The relationship between them developed naturally, based on shared values and mutual admiration for the work each was doing. Dorothy watched the romance blossom with joy, happy to see her granddaughter finding someone who valued her completely. "He's different from any man you've ever brought to meet me," Dorothy commented after a family lunch. "What do you mean different?" Jennifer asked, curious. "He looks at you the way your grandfather used to look at me at the beginning of our marriage. With respect, admiration, and true love," Dorothy smiled nostalgically. "It's the kind of look that lasts a lifetime." Jennifer and Daniel's wedding was held in the property's garden, among the same rose bushes where Dorothy used to watch her granddaughter play decades ago. All the women from the center participated in the organization, turning the ceremony into a celebration of the community they had built together. Dorothy, now 85 years old, read an emotional passage during the ceremony. "True love is not just between two people, but also between a person and their community, between the present and the past, between dreams and reality. Today we celebrate all these kinds of love." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. After the wedding, Daniel moved to the property, bringing new ideas and energy to the work developed there. He implemented group therapy programs and personal development workshops that perfectly complemented the existing activities. The couple also began hosting university students who wanted to do internships and research on social and community development. The property became a model of how private initiative could effectively contribute to social issues. 3 years after the center's inauguration, unexpected news brought new excitement to the family. Jennifer discovered she was pregnant, and Dorothy's joy was indescribable. "This child will grow up knowing their great-grandmother from day one," Jennifer said, stroking her still small belly, "and will grow up learning that helping other people is something natural and important," Dorothy added, with tears in her eyes. The pregnancy also brought a deep reflection on continuity and legacy. Jennifer began systematically documenting the family and center's history, wanting to ensure future generations would know the truth about their origins. During this period, she discovered even more details about Dorothy's life that demonstrated her strength and determination. In the most difficult years, when she was completely isolated from her family, Dorothy had worked as a seamstress and embroiderer, always setting aside part of her income to help other women in need. "Did you ever think about giving up?" Jennifer asked during an intimate conversation. Many times, Dorothy admitted, but whenever I was about to lose heart, someone would appear needing help. I realized my pain had a purpose, to teach me to understand other people's pain. Dorothy began writing her memoirs, encouraged by Daniel, who recognized the historical and social value of her experience. The book became a collaborative project, with several of the women she had helped contributing their own accounts. The birth of Olivia, daughter of Jennifer and Daniel, was a moment of celebration for the entire center community. Dorothy, despite her advanced age, showed renewed energy to care for her great-granddaughter and pass on the values she considered important. This girl will grow up knowing she is loved not just by her family, but by an entire community, she would often say while rocking Olivia. As Olivia grew, the property became increasingly a symbol of hope and transformation in the region. Delegations from other towns came to learn about the project, and several replicas were implemented in distant communities. The work developed by Dorothy and Jennifer gained official recognition when they received a state award for social development. During the ceremony, they were interviewed by journalists from major media outlets. "What was the most difficult moment of all these years?" asked one reporter. "Discovering that I had lost so many years away from my granddaughter because of prejudice and financial interests," Dorothy replied. "But the most rewarding was realizing it's never too late to correct injustices and build something positive. And for you, Jennifer," the reporter continued, "the hardest part was accepting that my family had lied to me my whole life. The most rewarding is seeing that pain transformed into strength to help other people." Jennifer held Dorothy's hand. The public recognition brought even more visibility to the center's work, resulting in partnerships with universities, international organizations, and the state government. Resources increased, allowing for program expansion and professionalization of various activities. Dorothy, at 87 years old, decided to gradually reduce her direct activities, spending more time recording her experiences and mentoring younger leaders. She wanted to ensure her wisdom would be preserved and properly passed on. "My body is slower, but my mind is clearer than ever," she commented during a planning meeting. "I know exactly what needs to be done for this work to continue for generations." One of Dorothy's final projects was creating a historical archive within the center, documenting not only the activities developed there, but also the history of social injustices that motivated its creation. The archive became an important resource for researchers and students. One spring morning, Dorothy woke up feeling especially nostalgic. She asked Jennifer to accompany her on a walk through the property, revisiting all the places that had been important in her life. "I want to show you where I planted the first rose bush, where I built the first makeshift shelter, where I cried when I thought I'd never see you again," she said, guiding her daughter and granddaughter along the familiar paths. The walk became a moment of deep reflection about everything they had built together. The property, once considered the worst piece of the family inheritance, had become the heart of a social transformation benefiting hundreds of people. "Olivia will grow up knowing this story since she was tiny," Jennifer said, watching her 2-year-old daughter exploring the garden. "And I hope she'll also find her own way to keep helping others." Dorothy smiled, watching her great-granddaughter trying to catch a butterfly. That same week, Dorothy received an unexpected visit that moved her deeply. It was Mary, the first woman she had helped decades ago, now a grandmother too and owner of a successful small business. "I came to thank you personally for everything you did for me," Mary said, crying, "and I want to make a donation to ensure other women receive the same chance I got." "You don't need to thank me," Dorothy replied. "You just need to keep being the wonderful person you've become. I want my granddaughter to know your story. I want her to learn early about the importance of helping others," Mary insisted. Mary's visit inspired Dorothy to organize a special gathering, bringing together all the women who had passed through the center over the years. The meeting was scheduled for the following month, coinciding with the 5th anniversary of the center's official establishment. The gathering brought together over 200 people, including the women helped, their families, volunteers, supporters, and local authorities. It was an emotional celebration that concretely demonstrated the impact of the work developed by Dorothy and Jennifer. During the ceremony, several women shared testimonials about how their lives had been transformed. One of them, now a doctor, gave a particularly touching speech. "Mrs. Dorothy didn't just give me shelter when I needed it. She gave me hope and taught me that I was worth more than the difficult circumstances I was living through." Dorothy, visibly moved, gave a final speech that remained engraved in the memory of all present. "I've learned throughout life that our true wealth isn't in what we accumulate, but in what we share. It's not in what we keep for ourselves, but in what we leave for the world." After the ceremony, Dorothy confided in Jennifer that she felt at peace and prepared for whatever the future might bring. She had seen her legacy consolidated and her family reunited. Her last concerns had been resolved. 6 months after the big gathering, Dorothy began showing signs of more pronounced tiredness. The doctors confirmed it was the natural wear of age with no specific health problems, but recommended she further reduce her activities. Jennifer arranged special care for her grandmother, ensuring she had all the necessary comfort without losing the autonomy she valued so much. Olivia, now 3 years old, became special company for her great-grandmother, bringing joy and youthful energy to her days. "She has your eyes," Dorothy would say, watching Olivia play in the garden. "And your determination," Jennifer would add, seeing her daughter persist in trying to climb a tree. During her last active months, Dorothy dedicated herself to finishing her autobiography and organizing all the center's important documents. She wanted to make sure nothing would be lost and the continuity of the work would be guaranteed. On a particularly clear autumn afternoon, Dorothy asked to be taken to the mineral water spring that had been the catalyst for so many transformations. Seated in a comfortable chair that Daniel had placed there, she remained silent for a long time, just contemplating the crystal-clear water. "What are you thinking about?" Jennifer asked, sitting beside her. "I'm thinking that life is like this spring," Dorothy replied slowly. "Sometimes it seems hidden, but it always finds a way to bubble up and bring benefits to many people." "Do you have any regrets?" Jennifer asked. "Just one. I wish I had been braver when I was young. Maybe if I had fought harder, we wouldn't have lost so many years apart," Dorothy sighed. "But later I learned that sometimes the difficult paths lead us exactly where we need to be." That night, Dorothy had an especially peaceful sleep. In the morning, Jennifer found her in her bed with a serene expression, having passed away during her sleep as she had always wished. On the bedside table, a final letter addressed to her granddaughter. The letter read, "My dear Jennifer, if you're reading this, it means I've departed in peace knowing that our love survived all the lies and separations. I watched over you from a distance when it was necessary, and I had the joy of caring for you up close in recent years. Now I trust you to take care of everything we built together. Love Olivia deeply, and teach her that helping others is the most beautiful way to live. Your grandmother who always loved you, Dorothy." Dorothy's wake gathered hundreds of people from across the region. The local church wasn't enough to accommodate everyone who wanted to pay their respects. Representatives from social organizations, government officials, academics, journalists, and especially the women who had been touched by her kindness. During the ceremony, Jennifer read a message on behalf of the family. "Dorothy taught us that a person's true legacy isn't in the possessions they leave behind, but in the lives they transform. She transformed hundreds of lives and created a network of love and support that will continue to exist long after her departure." The burial took place at the local cemetery, but Jennifer decided to also create a memorial on the property at the exact spot where Dorothy used to sit and observe the activity in the town square. A simple stone with the inscription, "Dorothy Taylor. She taught that true love knows no bounds of time or circumstances." In the months following Dorothy's passing, Jennifer had to find the strength to keep the center's activities running normally. The community's support was crucial, with several of the women who had been helped taking on administrative and operational responsibilities. Daniel became even more present in the activities, helping Jennifer process her grief while keeping the projects moving forward. Olivia, despite being little, seemed to understand that her great-grandmother had passed away, but that her presence was still felt in every corner of the property. "Mommy, where's Grandma Dorothy?" she would occasionally ask. "She's watching over us from a special place," Jennifer would reply. "And you can talk to her whenever you want, because she's still in our heart." 3 years after Dorothy's departure, the center had become established as a national reference in social assistance and community development. Jennifer received invitations to present the project at national and international conferences, bringing their experience to even larger contexts. During one of these presentations, she was asked what Dorothy's greatest lesson had been. Her answer summed up everything she had learned. "She taught me that our true family isn't necessarily those we're born with, but those who choose to stay with us and support us, and that our true wealth lies in how many lives we can positively touch." The center's success inspired the creation of a national foundation named after Dorothy, dedicated to replicating the model in other regions of the country. Jennifer Taylor became the foundation's president, traveling across the United States to guide the implementation of new projects. Olivia grew up immersed in this environment of solidarity and social purpose. At 6 years old, she already showed a special sensitivity to social issues and often organized games where she helped the people visiting the center. "She truly inherited her great-grandmother's spirit," Daniel would comment, watching Olivia interact naturally with the children from the assisted families. "I hope she also inherited the wisdom to use this gift positively," Jennifer would reply, proud of her daughter. 5 years after Dorothy's passing, the property once considered the family's worst inheritance had become a social asset recognized by the state government. The center received official support and had its activities studied by national and international universities. Brian and Michael, who had completely reconciled with Jennifer, became regular financial supporters of the center. They also started their own social projects in their cities, inspired by their sister's example. "It took a long time, but we finally understood what Dad tried to teach us through the inheritance," Brian admitted during a visit to the center. "He gave each of us exactly what we needed to find our true purpose," Michael added. During the center's 6th anniversary, Jennifer announced the opening of a new facility, specifically dedicated to serving children and teenagers. The project had been dreamed up by Dorothy, who always worried about younger generations. The inauguration ceremony for the new facility was attended by national authorities and representatives from international organizations. The official recognition of the work developed there had surpassed all initial expectations. During her inauguration speech, Jennifer reflected on the journey that had brought them there. 7 years ago, I arrived at this property thinking I had only inherited an old house. Today, I know I inherited much more, a life mission, a true family, and the responsibility to continue a legacy of love. Olivia, now 7 years old, cut the inauguration ribbon alongside her mother, symbolizing the continuity of generations committed to social work. Her presence at the ceremony represented the promise that Dorothy's values would continue to be passed down. After the ceremony, Jennifer took Olivia to Dorothy's memorial for a private moment of reflection. "Grandma Dorothy would be so proud to see all this," she said, stroking her daughter's head. "I feel like she's here with us," Olivia replied with childhood simplicity. "She is my love. She's in every person we help, in every life we transform, in every moment of love we share." That night, while Olivia slept, Jennifer wrote in her diary, "Today I fully understood what Dorothy meant about legacies. We don't just inherit property or money, we inherit responsibilities, values, purposes, and our obligation is to leave all this even better for the next generations." The story of Jennifer, Dorothy, and the Social Center continued to inspire people across the country. Books were written, documentaries produced, and the model was adapted for different socio-economic realities. 8 years after receiving that unwanted inheritance, Jennifer had become a national reference in social development. But more important than public recognition was the certainty that she had found her true place in the world. During an interview for a national television program, she was asked what advice she would give to people who feel lost in their families. "Sometimes our true family are the people we meet along the way, not necessarily those we're born with. And sometimes what seems like a loss or injustice can be exactly the opportunity we needed to discover who we truly are." The center continued growing and developing, always maintaining the principles established by Dorothy: dignity, respect, mutual support, and social transformation. New generations of women were benefited, and many of them returned years later to help others. Olivia grew up understanding that being part of that family meant having special responsibilities to the community. She often asked when she could really work at the center, showing eagerness to contribute more actively. "You're already working," Jennifer would usually respond. "Every time you're kind to someone, every time you help without expecting anything in return, you're continuing the work of your great-grandmother Dorothy." The property that had been scorned by Jennifer's brothers had become a symbol of hope and social transformation. Visitors came from other countries to learn about the project, and several adaptations were implemented internationally. 10 years after arriving at that abandoned house, Jennifer organized a big celebration, bringing together all the people who had been touched by Dorothy's work. It was a 2-day party with cultural performances, emotional testimonials, and lots of mutual recognition. During the celebration, a special surprise moved everyone present. The state government announced the creation of an official program based on Dorothy's center model, with resources for implementation in 50 counties. "You've turned a local initiative into public policy," announced the Secretary of Social Development. "This is the highest recognition a social project can receive." Jennifer received the news with joy, but also with the humility she had learned from Dorothy. "This recognition isn't ours, but belongs to all the brave women who believed it was possible to build a fairer society," she said in her speech. The celebration ended with a special moment, the collective reading of Dorothy's last letter, now transformed into a sort of manifesto for the center. Hundreds of voices recited together the words that had inspired it all. "Our true wealth isn't in what we accumulate, but in what we share." End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this story and where you're following us from. If you have any experience to share with us, leave your sincere words in the comments. Do you believe Jennifer made the right decisions when facing her family? We'd love to read your opinion. Thank you so much for your company. Don't forget to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories.